speak to you.
Yeah.
Well, on behalf of the Maternity Consumer Network, thank you so much for your time today. It's really appreciated.
No problem.
Oh, good. Well, today we're going to discuss Jess's experiences with care providers at a maternity hospital during her pregnancy and the reasons she decided to change a planned hospital birth to a home birth with a midwife. Jess, would you like to speak about your experiences with the hospital and your experiences with your own midwife during pregnancy and your home birth?
Yeah, no worries. So I found out I was pregnant quite early. I went to my GP to confirm, and she got me to do a gestational diabetes test straight away because I have a high BMI. So she said, higher risk of having gestational diabetes, we should check straight away. And so I was referred to, it's a little while ago, so I'm trying to remember all the details, but I was referred to the hospital earlier than like a lot of people would, just so that I could get the ball rolling, and they were worried that I would probably have diabetes. And yeah, I was kind of already put on the back foot because I am, even though I have a high BMI, I'm pretty active. Like I play netball and cricket. Like I went to the gym every single day before the pandemic and then slightly wound it back a little bit. But yeah, I was a bit like, oh, okay.
You're healthy. You're a healthy boy.
Yeah, definitely. Cricket is a harder sport than you think. I had to keep up on the field.
Take your word for that.
Yeah. So I can't remember when it was, but I went into the antenatal clinic at the hospital, and anyway, I found out that I did not have gestational diabetes, but I was told that I would probably be best to be retested early and to act as though I had it, and eat the diet basically. Like no banana, no bread, no like high sugar, and all of that stuff. So I was kind of like, oh, okay, no problem, because I'd never been pregnant before. I didn't really know how much of a big deal that would be.
Right, so this was your first pregnancy. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So first trimester, I mean, you don't really want to eat. Like I wanted bread and pasta and like nurturing, like warm foods that, I just made my tummy feel okay. I was quite nauseous, but I was determined, no, they've told me to act as though I have gestational diabetes. Like it'll stop me from developing it because of my high BMI. So I kind of just jumped straight in, and I ended up being really, really ill. I lost like 15 kilos in maybe 4 weeks. And when I went in to see them again for my regular test, which is like, I guess after the first trimester, I can't really remember, when you meet the first midwife at the hospital and go through all that history and all that. Booking everything, booking in the birth and all that stuff. I said, like, listen, I feel really, really sick, and I think it's because I'm not eating, because I just can't. I just want toast. I just want like a piece of toast. But I'm trying to make myself have a salad instead, but it's just not working with me. Like, what can I do? And they were like, oh, I can see here. Yeah, you've dropped a bit of weight. Well done. And I was like, excuse me? Yeah. So I was kind of like, again, like, really? Because I'm feeling really sick. I don't feel well. I looked really pale, and yeah, it wasn't really working for me. That they were congratulating me on the weight loss. And I was just like, I just don't think it's the right way to do it. I feel ill. So I'm actually going to stop. I'm going to let my body tell me what to eat. And at the moment, that's like toast and like just things that I'm not meant to have. Like I really wanted bananas. I don't know what it was, but So
they're high in
that's kind of my first part of my pregnancy was really stressful because I was so worried. In my mind, it was like one bite of sugar or one, is going to make me have this gestational diabetes, which will be the worst thing in the world. Now I reflect back on that I've done my own research, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I am really sad that they made me feel that way. But yeah, so that was kind of my first meeting, and I was already put on the back foot. But then I was like, no, it's fine, I'm going to start listening to myself and go with what my body's telling me. I spoke to my GP and she was like, listen, you do what you need to do. I didn't realize that they'd be recommending all that. Like, do what you need to do. If you need to eat toast, eat toast. It's not going to give you diabetes straight away. If you're going to get gestational diabetes, it's really got nothing to do with your weight.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. So then I can't even remember how many weeks I was, but you kind of going into your regular...
You'd seen your GP, you'd had your booking in, you'd gone back to your GP, and then what happened after that?
So I know I was going for my regular appointments at the hospital.
Yeah.
And, you know, they booked me in for my scan, like they'd given me the recommendations for the scans and said, you know, if here's a few places that you can go to get the scans done. And it was all going really smoothly. I know then I got to the 20-week scan, you know, and they're looking, that's when it's like quite in depth. So they're talking to you about like, you know, the baby's heart and like they can see if things are forming well. I guess it's like midway through, so they can really see the baby quite clearly.
Yes.
Because of my BMI, apparently that can prevent the scan being as successful as, I don't know, they were just saying. So I was like, okay, no problem. But anyway, it was fine. I was really excited. I was so excited because I got to see, like, I could actually see the baby's heart and like liver and like things that were forming, and I was just like, oh my God, that's amazing.
The little legs kicking.
Yeah, like we got photos of the hands and the feet, and it was like, it really made me feel a bit more connected, I think, to the baby, because before that I'd been so medicalized just about silly things that I kind of forgot, oh, I'm actually doing this amazing thing. I've grown an organ, I've grown a baby, like so when I went into the hospital, I actually asked my husband to come to the appointments because this was just before the second wave of COVID, so kind of in between COVID. So he was actually allowed to come to some of my appointments before they stopped that again. So that was really good, because I said to him, like, I'm really dreading going to the hospital. Like, I'm excited because we get all these results and like we're going to hear all about the baby and like make sure everything's okay, and any risk factors that we might have like are going to come up now, so it'd be good if you're there. But also I just felt like I needed a bit of extra support, because every hospital visit, which I hadn't had that many, but it was just like I just felt like I was constantly put down, and I wanted that extra support.
You were seen as walking risk factors.
Yeah, 100%. So I'd been told like I'd seen the head obstetrician for one appointment, and he was fine. He didn't really talk to me that much. It was kind of just looked at my data and then put me into the high risk group, and I had to go on Wednesdays, and I was in team green and all these things that didn't mean anything to me. But what that ended up meaning was that I was not able to see any midwives. I was always going to see obstetricians, which really stressed me out, because I never saw the same obstetrician, not once. I always had a different obstetrician in my appointments.
Right.
And so kind of by a few appointments in, I'm kind of like, can I not see the person that I saw before? Because I'm constantly explaining my history. And
so
like
total lack of continuity of care.
Yeah, definitely. And it was, at first I thought, oh, this is just the way it must be. But then speaking to some of my friends who were in like low risk categories, they were like, oh no, I always see like the same midwife, don't you? And I was like, oh, they're like, oh, I know a team of my midwives, so I have 3 that I might like rotate around and see. And I was like, no, I've never seen the same person, not once.
Right.
I've seen the same midwives in the hallways, so they kind of are familiar, but not when I'm with the obstetricians. I couldn't even name them.
Telling your story again and again.
Yeah. So we went in for the 20-week appointment, and I was really excited. I was like, oh yes, like we can finally, we saw all those amazing things. Now we can hear. I felt in myself that everything was great. So I was like, I just have this really positive vibe, and I'm hoping I won't need to explain again everything that's been going on with myself, because this appointment's more about the baby. And then we sat in there. The first thing that the doctor said to me was, hi, my name's whatever her name was, and can you please tell me about your diabetes? And I was just like, oh yeah, I don't have it. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I don't have diabetes, and I don't have gestational diabetes. So tell me about the scan. And she was just like, well, no, your numbers are telling me that you, while you don't technically have it, in some health districts, these numbers would say that you're on the cusp. And I've just come from a different health district and I'm working in this one now.
Right.
And I think you should be treated like you
a gestational diabetic.
I was just like, not this again. Like, sorry, you're telling me that I do have it. It's just that the numbers here mean that I don't. No, you're just on the cusp. I'm like, okay, oh, not this again. Like, I was just like ready for a fight, I guess. I don't want to say fight, but I was just kind of like, okay, listen, I'm not going to sit here and, I kind of just spoke my mind and just said, I'm not going to sit here. Like I just said, I feel like you're just quite like biased against like a fat person. And I do not use fat in a derogatory term. I mean, I have got body fat. Like I would call myself that. And oh my gosh, it was like, she was like, I would never, ever call a patient fat. That's the most horrible description you could call someone. And I was like, oh, I really don't think it is. Like, it's fine. Yeah. So in my mind, when she reacted that way, when I used that word and she was quite thin herself, that was like, okay, maybe she's very biased. She doesn't even realize.
How?
So
she was very defensive.
Like just that one word just triggered her, and she was like, I would never say that about a patient. I would never use that word. And I was like, okay,
she made it about herself.
Yeah, just happy to say high BMI. It's basically the same. Anyway, so I was really upset. She said, right, because of your risk factors, I would like to book your induction. Start thinking about the date that you'd like to have your baby. I think we'll probably go to 38 weeks. We'll let you go to 38 weeks. And I was like, I'm 20 weeks pregnant. How do you know what's happening in the next 18 weeks? Like, I'm so sorry. I said, it's very important to me that if medically okay, I would really like to have a physiological birth. I've researched a lot. I've listened to a lot of podcasts. Like, it's really important to me to, I don't want to choose my baby's birthday. I would like my baby to choose their birthday, unless something medically comes up in the next 18 weeks, which means I do need to be induced. That's not on my radar. And she was just like, oh, well, I think we should put it on your radar because, it's exciting. You can pick now. We can have a look at the dates now if you want. And I'm like,
you just explained to her why you didn't want to do that.
Yeah. So then I started getting really upset. And I think I was crying, and like my husband's trying to like comfort me. And she was saying, darling, I'm not meaning to upset you. I just want to give you a baby that's alive. And I'm like, I'm 20 weeks pregnant. How do you know? Like, I was like, I just didn't expect it. I really didn't expect that. Yeah. And this is like my 20-week appointment. And I'm like, I thought everything was fine. You said, like, is the scan not okay? Like, is there something wrong? Oh, no, everything's fine with the baby. Yeah, no, you should have been told that at the scan. They would have gone through everything with you and shown you the feet. And isn't that exciting? Oh, and I was like, yeah, but why are you now saying I need to be induced in 18 weeks? Oh, no, that's because of your BMI. And I was just like, this is just not. I ended up just shutting down. Like, I was just like, I can't even speak, because every time I spoke, I started crying. And I just kind of looked at my husband, and he just said, listen, is there anything that we need to know about the baby? What's our next step? And I can't even remember what the next step was. Like, it was probably another scan, because I was getting a few more frequent scans because of my BMI, and coming back for the next appointment. So we booked all that in, found out there was nothing we needed to know right now. Nothing was wrong now. And she said, let's talk at your next appointment about booking your induction, because you will be induced if you get to 38 weeks.
So how did you get to a stage at which you decided to make that switch? What was the catalyst there?
I was actually attending prenatal yoga and a women's circle, like a mother's circle. Just something that I had felt I really wanted some community around me. And so I just signed on to these classes. So they were weekly. And actually at the class after this appointment, I think the appointment was Wednesday and the class was a Thursday, so it's still quite fresh. And we usually speak about how we're going, and all the women get a chance to speak in circle. And so I broke down and I was crying, and like I couldn't talk. And so the teacher, who was a doula, said, listen, if you feel comfortable, would you like to come and talk to me after class? Maybe I can help. I can see you're really upset. Let's get your mind okay. Let's do some yoga and, you know, connect in with the baby and all that kind of thing. Like, she was trying to, I think, uplift me. And so then after the appointment, after the class, I spoke to her, and she was kind of the one that was like, Jess, you are a strong woman. You do not need, like, you're in charge of your own birth. So you don't have to book in an induction. Like, it was like, because I'd felt like I'm going to have this baby at 38 weeks and I'm going to be induced, and the cascade of intervention. And I was just freaking out.
Yeah.
And she kind of reminded me, like, hey, you do not, that was an option. It was not something that is being told to you. And so that kind of changed my frame of thinking. Then I was like, yeah, I would never, if someone did that to me in a workplace, I would never let them treat me that way. But because, I don't know, she was making me feel bad, I think, we want to give you an alive baby. Well, I'm like, of course I want an alive baby.
Yes.
Like, so I felt like, yeah. And so that kind of, changed my thinking a little bit. And I started to feel a bit more empowered. And then I went to a local birth class that was run privately, Illawarra birth classes. And they were talking about, you know, different types of birth and like your different options that people might pick. And they mentioned private midwife. And I was like, oh, I've never heard of that before.
Right.
And so then they asked everyone to please share
their experiences.
You feel comfortable, like, how are you birthing? Where are you going to birth? And I said, you know, public hospital. And I got upset again. It's like so emotional. And again, they were like, well, I'm going to have a break. Like, Jess, like, do you want to come and have a quick chat? They were also two local doulas, different doulas. We're so lucky in our area that we have so much birth support, like, out of the hospital.
Yeah.
And they said, listen, like, I heard you say you'd never heard of private midwifery before, and that it was important to you to have that continuity of care, but you weren't having it at the hospital. We know we're so lucky that, I said, you know, I'm 30 weeks pregnant. It's too late. All the midwives will be booked out. And they said, no, we know someone that's just returned to work from maternity leave. Here's an email address. Think about it. Look it up. Do some research. And if you feel comfortable, reach out and see if it's the care for you. Because I said, I can't have that because my BMI is too high. Like, I've even been told I can't use the birth pool at the hospital. So how could I have a home birth? And they were like,
just couldn't use the birth pool at the hospital.
Yeah. So during one of my appointments, I'd asked if I could go up and have a look at the birthing areas in the hospital. But because of COVID, they weren't doing tours, but they gave me like a video. And then I was like, oh, amazing. Like, there's a few rooms, like, because our local hospital had just been renovated. And I said, oh, that's so cool. There's a few rooms that have birth pools. I'd always wanted to at least labor in water. And they were like, oh, no, you won't be allowed to use that because your BMI is too high. If you faint in the pool, we won't be able to get you out. It's a hazard.
Oh, okay.
But that was like a hospital policy. Okay. So I was kind of like,
oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah. I was like, what about
so what happened? What happened when you obviously did decide to reach out to this midwife, and what happened then?
Yeah. So my husband and I had a big chat about it. And then I decided I was like, well, what's the point? I may as well reach out and see if this is even an option for us, because I have a high BMI. It's a risky birth. Like, I was still in that frame of mind that what they were saying at the hospital was 100% the Bible. And so reached out, and the lovely midwife was like, oh, if that's your only risk factor, like, that's absolutely fine. Like, let's meet in person. We'll discuss lifestyle and see how you're going. Like, if you want to, and I can let you know. And yeah, when we met in person, she was like, oh my gosh, no, you're a very healthy person. I'm really sorry you've been treated this way. And like, there was absolutely no pressure, but I just felt as soon as I met her, like she already presented options and she was talking about things that I was just like, oh, I thought all of that was off the table for me. So it wasn't really a hard decision in the end because it just felt right from the word go. I felt so much more comfortable, and all the appointments were going to be in my house. I wouldn't have to go into the hospital. And yeah, I knew that it was the right decision.
Yeah.
I always felt uneasy going to the hospital. I never left feeling great. I always felt worried, anxious, like, yeah. And then as soon as I met with her, I just felt really calm.
You felt safe and listened.
Safe, yeah, definitely. Yeah. And definitely like respected.
Yeah. And how did your home birth go?
It was amazing. So I had a slight, at the very end of my pregnancy, I think I might have been like 36 weeks. They'd asked, I had already had an extra scan that was booked in, that was complimentary because I'd had so many scans previously. Right. So I just said to my husband, like, even though my midwife has said, like, you don't have to go for that scan if you don't want to, but you can. I said, like, oh, let's go. Like, I'd love to see the baby again. And, you know, it'll be like the last scan, like how exciting. And so we went for that and they discovered that I had low fluid. So I went to the hospital and had the CTG, and I spoke to my midwife on the phone and she's like, best to get the CTG. Like, if you don't feel like there's anything wrong, that's okay. But I would say, like, she can't really give medical advice, but she's like, I think it's fine. Just go and get the CTG to make yourself feel better. We'll see how the baby's going. And then I'll come over to your house tomorrow and do some extra monitoring for you at home as well. And we can, but she's like, I want you to know when you go in there, if there's low movement, there's a chance you just give me a call, because there's a chance that there is something going on. And I was like, yep, no problem. The baby was fine. The movement was fine. The heart the accelerations, decelerations were perfect. Everything was good. So I went home and I think I had to go back a week later to see how my fluids were going, if it was just a day where I hadn't had much fluid, or because the scans aren't 100% accurate. And I was explained that like 15% either side.
So did they repeat the scan, or did they just do another CTG?
They repeated the scan.
Yeah.
My fluid was higher than the first time, but still on the cusp of being low is what I was told. So we went for another CTG. Again, everything was fine. I felt fine. Right. But because I was 37 weeks, the hospital were like, we're happy to induce you now. Oh, this must have been on a Friday. Come back on Monday and we'll induce you because you've made it to the safe zone.
You've made it to term. Yeah, what's classified as term.
And it'll be best just to, you've got low fluid. So if you continue with the pregnancy, what did they say? Your baby can suffocate in the womb.
Right.
I said that I had a private midwife and I was hoping to have a home birth. And they said that would be really unsafe because there's so many risks and my midwife won't be monitoring the baby. So if the baby goes into distress, we won't know. So that I was like, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to do? So I called my midwife and she said, no, I will be monitoring the baby. I do monitor the baby. I don't have a continual monitoring on your...
She used a Doppler. Yeah.
So she's like, listen, your fluid isn't low at any other health district.
Right. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. So our health district had just changed the level of fluid to
their guidelines. Yeah,
7 centimeters, like 7 something, and we'd changed it to 5.
Right.
And my fluid level was like 5 or 4.8 or something like that. So she was like, there's no need to book an emergency induction or anything like that. So just, you have time to go home and think about it. And she just said, my recommendation is just to keep super hydrated. So she sent me a whole bunch of articles on this research that had come out about keep like over hydrating the mother. and how that will, and oh my gosh, like it worked. Like I had to go back in a few weeks to scan, and my fluid had gone back up. So I was like, oh, maybe I'm just dehydrated or something.
You didn't need an induction.
No. So, but then the hospital was saying like, oh, it's still kind of low. So if you want to be induced, you can. And I was just like, why are we pushing this on me? Because it was then by that stage, I was 38 weeks pregnant.
Yeah.
So they were like, really just like, listen, instead of coming in for all these extra tests, just have an induction. Like you're ready anyway. And I'm like, I'm not ready. And also the baby's not ready. And yeah, I just really had to be like, no, I don't want an induction. So again, I went home, but it was just on my mind. I was just constantly like, I know I was drinking a lot of water. So I think then I got to 39 weeks and I had one last scan where I was like, let's just see what the fluid level is. And then my fluid level was down to 4. So again, my midwife was like, listen, it's okay. You do not need to be coerced into having an induction if you do not want one. If you want one, I'll come to the hospital and I can be your support person. I cannot be your midwife because she didn't have admitting rights to that hospital. But yeah, so again, and I was just like, listen, no, I don't want one. So I went home and that hospital, like, we're going to call you tomorrow to check on you. Which they didn't end up doing, I don't think, but I just got really nervous. I was like, I just want to have the baby. Like, I can't keep doing this. This is just really stressing me out. So I decided to go and have some acupuncture because I'd been told about how it can bring on labor. I was like eating hot curry and walking on gutters, and I was doing everything I could to, I mean, really it is kind of a type of induction, but it's less.
It's an augmentation. Yeah.
Yes, there we go. That's it. So I was doing all that. I went and had the acupuncture, and that night my water broke. So I was so excited. I was like, yes, okay, we've done it. We can have a home birth, like get the pool ready. Yeah, that was a bit early because my water actually, I did not end up having the baby until 4 days later.
Right.
So it was a big decision for me. Obviously, after I think 24 hours, my midwife was coming over and she was just like, listen, these are your options. You can go into the hospital and have an induction. You can stay and see what happens. I'll come over twice a day and help with the monitoring of the baby and yourself. Basically, I'd recommend you would stay home, and just because the risk of infection is a bit higher. She's like, you can have constant showers and just you need to really be drinking water constantly, just to make sure that you're okay. What do you want to do? So she presented me with options. I had a big chat with my husband. We spoke to a few other people that we know had given birth before where they'd had their water break earlier, and we decided that we'd wait. We were comfortable waiting 72 hours, and then we'd just see what happens, as long as I still felt okay and the baby was okay. So my midwife came over 2 or 3 times a day. Like, she was amazing. She was monitoring the baby, checking my heart rate, just checking everything was okay, checking in with us to make sure that we were still comfortable with the decision. She gave me a few articles and a few websites that were like medical boards and studies that had been done in different areas, and like, because I guess it is a little stressful. I think about it now, and actually the reaction of people when I tell them. At the time, I felt fine. I just felt, I didn't have any doubt. I was like, no, everything's fine. Everything is okay. The baby was moving around like a bit and kicking, and still those normal movements. There was nothing out of the ordinary except that my water had broken. It wasn't a huge gush, but
it was a leak. It was a leak.
Yeah.
And that can happen to women much earlier in their pregnancy, and their pregnancies are continued on for as long as possible.
Yeah. So I kind of, I just, and like my midwife was amazing. Like every time that I started to feel like, she was like, hey, what about if you start, this is a bit weird, but she was like, keep the pads, or show me the fluid that's coming out so that I can see. And, she was really like keeping my mind at ease, but also like, remember there's options and we can do this if you need to, and I'm happy to. So I felt really respected and empowered. It was definitely my decision. And yeah, then I think it was 4 days, and then I went into, like, I had really consistent contractions. I think I was watching like a lovey movie, and then we were playing cards, my husband and I, and like bouncing on the birth ball and just having a nice time. And
Relaxing.
yeah, I had a bit more continual contractions. So we decided to start baking a cake, because we were going to bake a birthday cake for the baby, and just doing like fun things together. I went and had a rest, and that the next morning when I woke up again, they were like continual, and then they would just stop at like 10 a.m. and then they'd start up again, and then they'd stop and start and stop. And so then I think I got to about 7 p.m. and they were consistent. So we let my midwife know, and she's like, yeah, no problem. Let me know when they get however far apart they needed to be. But yeah, I'm around. I won't do anything. Like, I'll get, my husband's here with the kids, so it's all good. I'm ready to go when you are. And it got to, I think, 10 p.m. She came over. I was doing some calm birth meditations in the nursery, kind of trying to keep my oxytocin flowing and happy. And we put the birth pool up, and we were boiling kettles and getting ready for the hot water. And as soon as my midwife came, my contractions stopped again. But she said, like, it's really normal. Just like get back in the zone. You're okay. I'm here. I'm not going to leave. We'll keep getting the birth pool ready. And I was like freezing cold. It was June. And yeah, I was so cold. I expected to be like really boiling hot and sweaty and getting, but no, I was like shivering. And so I was like wearing these coats in labor. And then, yeah, basically the contractions amped up again. I have no idea what time anything happened, but I think I had about 9 or 10 hours of active labor. 45 minutes of proper pushing. I was in the birth pool for a little while, and I was asked, like, do you feel the urge to push? Like, how are you feeling? Like, how's it going? And I was like, yeah, because in my head, I remember thinking, if I start pushing, this is over. So just push. And so I was like, yeah, I'm going to push. I'm going to push now. And my midwife's like, but do you actually feel the urge to push? Like, you don't need to push if you're not feeling it. And I was like, yeah, no, I feel the urge. I'm going to do it. And I just start pushing and pushing and pushing. I was having really bad back labor. I just wanted it to end. Like, it was awful. I was in the birth pool, so I don't remember any of this, but my husband said that, like, in between contractions, it was like looking at a floating body. Like, I was just floating, completely zonked out. And then I'd kind of sit up, have a contraction, and then just go back. No one talking to me, no one. And anytime someone did talk to me, I was like, I would bite their head off. Apparently I was a bit, but I was in labor land, so I don't remember any of this. Anyway, that had been going on for a little while, and I just said, like, something's going on, like, something's wrong. I can't keep just pushing, like, I'm so exhausted. And so we weren't doing any checks, but my midwife was very aware that I'd been in the pool for a long time and my water had been broken for a while. So she was like, listen, risk of infection wise, the water's probably not as fresh as it should be. I think we should hop out. And I said, could you please just check? So it would be my first time that I was even touched, really. Like, I didn't even want to be touched. So it was kind of nice. So I was like, okay, I'm ready. You can check. So she checked and just said that, oh, there's a small cervical lip, which is probably what you're pushing into. And let's just see, what do you want to do? And I'd been practicing spinning babies for a little while. So we did an inversion on my bed, like head down, bum up. And I had a contraction where I didn't push. And that one, I think it was 3 actual contractions, but I knew from the first one, it worked. Like, something felt different. Yeah. I was on my bed. I got up to go into the ensuite because I felt like I needed to go to the toilet. But actually, no, it was just, that was an actual urge to push. I turned around to my midwife and I was like, I'm so sorry. I lied before. I didn't need to push. I didn't feel the urge to push, but I feel the urge to push right now. Yeah. She's like, great. Okay, let's do it. And it was 45 minutes. It didn't even feel like that. It felt like 10 seconds. And I pushed little baby boy out next to my bed on the floor, on all fours. My husband caught him, and yeah, like his APGAR was like, I don't even know, 9, I think. Like he came out this beautiful color, and he was crying, so like great lungs, and just like snuggled him into me, and yeah, it was really amazing.
Oh, you did it. You did it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
fought really hard for it during your pregnancy.
Yeah.
And you took back your personal power, and you had that outcome you were really seeking.
Yeah.
Thank
The
you
funniest
so
thing
much.
was the next day, so he was born at 8 a.m. on his due date. Yeah. So it was his due date. The next day, the hospital called and were like, we need to book your induction in because we know that your water is really low. And, and it was this obstetrician. He was so pushy and he was so rude. And I was just sitting on a birth ball holding my baby, and I just let him go. I was just like bouncing, like, oh, just let him talk because he never wanted to hear what I had to say. And then right at the end of the conversation, when he was saying, what time are you coming in today? We need to induce you. I said, oh, sorry, I've actually had the baby, so we're good. Thanks, though. And I kind of,
bye.
And he was just like, oh, well. I was like, yes, I had a perfectly safe home birth with my lovely midwife.
Thank you for nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for the non-support I received. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really,
I'm so happy that I always think about like what would have happened if I know what would have happened. I would have been induced when I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know, like who knows, could have ended cesarean, because probably my labor wouldn't. And even if I had gone into labor like I did at home and then gone into the hospital, I think when the cervical lip, there's no way that they would have been letting me do inversion. Like, my midwife supported me to do that. One of my other friends is like, oh yeah, I had a cervical lip as well, and I ended up having, I can't remember whether I think she might have had an episiotomy. And I'm like, because the baby was stuck, so the baby wouldn't come out. Like, and I was just like, oh, I just feel really grateful that for my midwife, but also just like myself, I feel really proud of that I'd been able to. Yeah.
And be proud of the decisions that you made along the way too, because that's not easy. Getting that right
even
support.
some of my family members were like, Jess, why are you doing this? Like, I really had to fight everyone. I was lucky that I have a really supportive husband who listened to me, and also like I'm quite a research-based person, and so is he. And data, he's like a data analyst, so he kind of gets that. So I just showed him a lot of research that I've been doing. So it wasn't that I made these decisions just on a whim and I just wanted to be unsafe and like just like throw caution to the wind. No, like we were very considered.
We're looking for safe options. Yeah.
In my pregnancy also, I forgot to mention, I did see the documentary Birth Time.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. So that really helped me be like, it actually really helped me with my mindset, because I was like, oh my gosh, like everything I'd been feeling about the system was literally in that, like in the documentary. I was like,
going back to the fact that
it's not just me.
Going back to at the very basis is physiological birth, and everything you've described, all these risk factors, they are just that. They're risk factors. Yes, that has to be considered, but it doesn't have to overwhelm the management. But in your case, it did. Okay. Well, thank you so much for talking to us today. I've really enjoyed this, but we've recorded it. I hope we have. Okay, well, I better go.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you.